fast, where truth moves faster than a Holstein calf. No waiting on some pretty page. We're charting new ground in the digital age. From genomic codes to row-wide facts, we cut through the noise, no holding back. Not your daddy's dairy news tonight. We're sparking debates with every insight. The ring's not where the real fight's at. It's in the data, in the channel chat. From pasture to processor to your morning cup, we're raising the stakes. Try and get ahead of herd. Yeah! Where the future's more than just a word. Ahead of herd. Come on! The bullvine's calling, let your voice be heard.
Welcome back to the Bullvine Podcast, where we cut through dairy industry noise to get you the insights that actually matter for your operation. We are diving deep today, and if you manage dry cows, transition cows, or fresh cows, you really need to turn up the volume.
And today we're dissecting a feature piece that has some serious implications for your balance sheet. This isn't just about tweaking a ration. This is about recognizing that the difference between success and failure in the parlor, well, it starts a full 60 days before calving.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a 60-day opportunity or a 60-day train wreck, depending on how you look at it.
I think you hit the nail on the head. We've all spent countless hours worrying about fresh cow treatment protocols. You know, we panic when the DAs spike. But the conversation we should be having isn't about reaction. It's about precision prevention. And that's the core idea here. These transition cow crashes are just silently draining profits.
Silently is the right word.
And the data is screaming that targeted, personalized protocols can cut disease rates by a solid 25 to 30%.
Wait a minute. 25 to 30%. That's not a small number.
It's huge.
That's not marginal. That's revolutionary. We're talking about cutting metritis, ketosis, and DAs by a quarter to almost a third. On any mid-sized operation, that is just pure profit recovered.
Especially now with how volatile feed inputs are.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And the stakes they're absolutely crystalline. The foundational science, and this is coming out of major institutions like Penn State, Cornell, Wisconsin, it all points to the same conclusion. Implementing these targeted protocols translates into a net benefit, and I want to emphasize net benefit, of somewhere between $200 to $500 per cow per lactation.
Okay, stop right there. $500 net benefit per cow.
Per cow.
That is a figure that should make every single listener sit up straight. Let's just put that into perspective for a second.
Please do.
If you're running a 1,000-cow dairy, that's $500,000 annually just hanging in the balance, all based on how you manage a 60-day window.
$500,000.
That's enough capital to buy a decent piece of equipment, hire another specialized team member, or finally get that integrated software system you've been putting off.
So if the ROI is that obvious, if the science is settled, why are we here talking about this like it's a revolutionary concept instead of just standard operating procedure?
Right.
That's where the controversy is, and it's deeply frustrating.
It sounds like another case where the science is perfect in the lab, but the farm gate reality just kills the adoption.
Precisely. The research suggests that roughly 80% of U.S. dairies, the majority of operations, they lack the integrated data systems, or, and this is the really crucial part, the financial reserves to execute these approaches consistently. We know the solution, but most of the industry is stuck in what we call the productivity trap.
So this isn't a science problem. The researchers aren't waiting for some magic bullet. This is fundamentally a management problem.
A management and an infrastructure problem. You can't implement a precision protocol if your data is sitting on a clipboard that gets wet in the rain.
Or if you can't afford the $5,000 for the software that would connect your BCS score to your feeder.
Exactly.
And we saw this play out so dramatically in Europe when the EU mandated selective dry cow protocols back in early 2022. They forced the industry to adopt this kind of precision.
There was a lot of pushback on that, I remember.
Of course, there was resistance. But what happened? They now report lower mastitis rates than they had with blanket treatment.
Get out of here, really?
Really. The forced regulatory shift created the necessary support infrastructure. It proves that when the industry aligns, whether it's by mandate or market pressure, the targeted approach works at scale.
That's a critical point. It shows that if the system is built to support it, farmers will adopt it and they'll benefit. That's a powerful lesson for us here in the States, where voluntary adoption is still, really low.
It really is.
It signals that we need a systemic push, maybe from processors or the large co-ops, to help build that technical scaffolding for everybody. So Our mission today is a bit complex. First, we need to identify exactly where that $500 leak happens. Second, we have to analyze the hard economics of targeted interventions versus just blanket treatment. And third, and this is the most important part for you listening right now, we need to figure out the realistic starting point for any operation, regardless of size, that wants to capture that $200 to $500 gap without bankrupting themselves on software.
Let's do it.
Let's start with the pain point. You're walking the fresh pen at 5 a.m. You spot that cow, that one cow that's just off.
Oh, I know that cow. We all know that cow. Head is a little low. She's standing away from the bunk, looks sluggish. She's not lying down, but she's not eating with any purpose either.
Right.
That's not intuition. That's the sound of dollar signs flying out the window. That little flashing red light means you're probably about to spend $300 to $1,000 dealing with the crash she's heading for.
We feel that loss instinctively, right? The vet call, the syringe, the labor. But we need to quantify the true cost because I think farmers dramatically underestimate the persistent hidden losses.
I think absolutely do.
I mean, foundational research, specifically from people like Dr. Daryl Neidham and Dr. Jessica McCart, adjusted for today's incredibly high costs, estimates clinical ketosis alone at $300 to $350 per case.
But again, that $300, $350, that's just the immediate cost.
Exactly.
Covers the drugs, the extra labor to handle her, maybe the first vet visit. The real punch is the persistent milk loss that follows her for the next 6 months.
Precisely. For a single case of clinical ketosis, we're talking about losing a staggering 600 to 800 pounds of milk over the lactation period.
Wow.
Now, let's run the math on that at a $20 hundredweight milk price. That's another $120 to $160 in lost revenue right on top of your treatment costs. So that $300 problem is now a $450 to $500 problem instantly.
And that's just ketosis. Metritis, the uterine infection, that's often considered the silent killer of profitability. It's not always dramatic, but the downstream effects are just relentless.
Right. And research from Cornell and Wisconsin suggests the true cost of metritis is somewhere between $300 and $500 per case.
It's always higher than you think.
And we need to be clear about why that number is so high. It's not just the antibiotics. That $300 to $500 for metritis, it factors in 3 distinct areas. 1, the actual cost of treatment and labor. 2, the lost milk. But critically, number 3 is the massive fertility hit.
The fertility factor. Yeah. When a cow has metritis, her uterus is inflamed. Even after that acute infection clears up, it takes way longer for her reproductive tract to recover.
Which means?
It means more days open, more expensive attempts at breeding, and ultimately a much lower chance of a successful next lactation. If you lose a month of a potential breeding window, that's hundreds of dollars in extended dry periods and feed costs right down the line.
It just compounds. And here is the absolutely terrifying kicker that moves this from just a problem to a catastrophe.
Okay.
Concurrency. The research shows that when a cow gets multiple diseases, say subclinical ketosis that's followed by metritis, or a DA that requires surgery, which, by the way, happens about 35% of the time in that first month.
35%, 1 in 3.
The losses easily top $1,000 per cow.
$1,000. We're not talking about a rounding error anymore. That is a massive chunk of change that you just threw away.
It's gone.
You fed that cow for 60 days in her dry period. You invested in her future. And then in the first 90 days of lactation, you lose the margin on $1,000 worth of production potential. You are actively subsidizing failure.
And think about today's high feed costs. That margin is so much thinner than it was 2 years ago. Every day you feed a cow who is underperforming because of a transition event cuts deeper into the profit of your healthy cows.
Preventing that $1,000 loss is exponentially more valuable than chasing a $10 increase in peak milk from a healthy cow.
100%.
That changes the calculus completely. We have to view an investment in transition management not as an expense, but as a mandatory insurance policy against a $1,000 loss.
Exactly. And that shift in mindset leads us straight to the prevention goal, the Penn State framework developed by researchers like Adrian Barragan. They are focusing the industry on preventing these expensive crashes by using existing information to identify who is at risk before the crash happens.
So they're not asking you to buy new gadgets.
No, they're asking you to get significantly smarter about the data we already collect, especially around dry-off and close-up.
So we've established the price of failure is high. Now let's look at where we can intervene most effectively. The framework highlights 3 critical windows: dry-off, close-up, and calving itself. In your experience, where does the trouble really start to germinate?
It starts at dry off, full stop.
You're going to say that.
If you mess up the dry off period, you are fundamentally setting that cow up for inflammation and metabolic chaos for the rest of her lactation. And the number one flag, the biggest predictor of a future wreck, is the overconditioned cow.
We all know they're bad news, but it's the actual hard data on the cost that forces you to change your management.
Let's hit them with the numbers because this is the data that has to drive the protocol. Cows with a body condition score, or BCS, of 3.75 or greater at dry off. They're just primed for metabolic catastrophe.
And why 3.75? What's the magic in that number?
Because that threshold signals excessive fat mobilization in the fresh period. They tracked thousands of lactations, and the data showed these cows produced a whopping 560 pounds less milk in the first 16 weeks of their next lactation.
560 pounds. That's not a mild inconvenience. That is a serious production hole, just because the cow carried an extra quarter point of fat at dry off.
And it's never just the milk, is it?
Never. They also show 10% more health events. And that's the classic domino effect. She's fat, she mobilizes too much fat, she gets ketosis, that suppresses her appetite, which leads to metritis, and boom, suddenly she's in that $1,000 category.
It's the cruel irony of farming, right? Comfort in the dry period translates to metabolic discomfort and sickness in the fresh period.
It really does.
But we also have to look at the genetics of high production. Cows still making 45 pounds of milk or more at dry off are also a high-risk flag.
And that's a management challenge because you hate to dry off a cow that's still producing that much. But if you push her hard right up to that 60-day mark, you increase the risk of milk leakage,
Which leads to
intramammary infections and mastitis in the dry period. You're fighting the very genetics you spent years selecting for.
Wait, what's the absolute worst-case cow? The one we absolutely must spend the $95 on?
Oh, that's the high-risk combo, the one that's both over-conditioned, say a BCS of 4.0, and she's still producing 50 pounds of milk. That cow is a walking liability. She needs to be separated, managed, and monitored like a hawk.
And we can't overlook somatic cell count, SCC, as a high-risk marker. Research by Pam Rug and Noelia Silva del Rio clearly shows the long-term impact of high SCC at dry off.
Right, so cows over 200,000 cells at the time of dry off,
Yeah.
they're not just mastitis risks themselves,
No, they significantly compromise their colostrum quality.
which means their calves, the future of your herd, get lower antibody levels. And that makes them more vulnerable to scours and respiratory disease. It's a systemic failure.
And the cow is penalized in production, too. She loses about 1,000 fewer pounds of milk in the first 16 weeks. So high SCC at dry off is costing you twice, in the cow and in the calf.
So those are the dry off flags. Let's shift to the close-up period, the final 2 to 3 weeks. This window is all about logistics, stress, and nutrition.
This is where we talk about DCAD, the dietary cation any indifference. I know that's a dense acronym, but for a farmer, DCAD is essentially your dietary electrolyte balance.
And why is that so critical right before calving?
Because if the diet isn't slightly anionic, if the DCAD is too positive, the cow can't mobilize calcium efficiently from her bones. When she calves, her sudden demand for massive amounts of calcium for colostrum and milk production creates a vacuum.
And she drops into subclinical or clinical hypocalcemia.
Milk fever.
Exactly. And that paralyzes the smooth muscle functions. She can't stand up, she can't clean out her uterus, and her immune system just crashes.
So DCAD is the nutritional linchpin for preventing the entire cascade of fresh cow diseases. If you mess up DCAD, you're pretty much guaranteeing metritis and ketosis.
Right. And other close-up red flags are logistics. Feed intake drops of 30% or more, which indicates stress or sickness, and the stress caused by unnecessary pen moves. Pen moves are huge. That last movement into the maternity or close-up pen causes stress, which spikes cortisol, which suppresses the immune system right when she needs it most. Minimize those moves, especially in that last week.
And of course, the obvious calving flags.
First calf heifers, always higher risk. Twins and dystocia cases. These are the cows that need immediate, high-priority protocols.
All of this data is gold. We can build the perfect checklist. But this brings us to the implementation barrier, the human factor, which research shows is the #1 reason these protocols fail.
You're talking about DCS scoring consistency. I'm not buying software if my team can't even agree on whether a cow is a 3.5 or a 4.0.
Exactly. Studies from the University of Wisconsin have repeatedly shown that when you have two different people, even two trained people scoring the same cow, they disagree by half a point or more, roughly 1/3 of the time.
Third of the time.
33% of the time, the people making the management decision don't agree on the primary metric.
And half a point is the difference between classification and misclassification. If my protocol says treat cows 3.75 and up, and the morning guy scores her 3.5 while the afternoon guy scores her 4.0, my system has failed.
Right?
And I've either wasted money treating a low-risk cow or missed a high-risk cow who is now going to cost me $1,000.
It undermines the entire economic benefit. The lack of consistency is the biggest red flag for implementation readiness. It's not about buying the right supplement. It's about ensuring the person with the clipboard or the tablet knows exactly what a 3.75 looks like every single time.
We have to address that human vulnerability if we really want to capture that $500 gap.
We need to shift gears and talk about where we spend our limited resources smarter. We established that treating every cow the same, the blanket approach, is expensive and often wasteful. Where does targeted intervention really give us the biggest bang for our buck?
The highest ROI currently sits in preventative anti-inflammatory intervention, specifically the trials using meloxicam. This is where precision timing really shines, and it's a great illustration of why the blanket approach fails.
The anti-inflammatory revelation. So why is it so powerful, and why is timing so critical?
Because it's all about dampening the intense systemic inflammation that's associated with calving. Calving is, metabolically, the most traumatic event in a cow's cycle. So Berrigan's team focused intensely on timing and parity. They found that first calf heifers treated just before expected calving showed dramatically different results compared to the older cows.
Okay, let's unpack the mechanism there. Why the difference between a heifer and an older cow?
The first calf heifer is undergoing two massive stressors at once: the stress of calving and the stress of integrating into the milking herd and establishing social hierarchy for the very first time.
Right, it's a double whammy.
Her immune system and inflammatory response are disproportionately high compared to a fifth lactation cow who has been through this rodeo multiple times. The meloxicam targets that intense first-time inflammatory response in the heifer.
So, by reducing that inflammation and pain pre-calving, you immediately free up energy that the heifer can put into milk production and immune function instead of just fighting that inflammatory response.
Exactly. And the results were staggering. In some of these trials, treated first calf heifers yielded up to 10 to 11 pounds more milk per day in early lactation.
10 to 11 pounds more.
That's not a sustained peak. That's a boost that shifts the trajectory of her entire first lactation, which is critical for her retention and lifetime productivity.
10 pounds a day difference just from one targeted intervention that immediately justifies the cost. But beyond the milk, there was an unexpected massive health win too, wasn't there?
Yes, the stillbirth rates in those treated heifers dropped by a shocking 20 percentage points.
90.
Saving a calf, improving the heifer start, and boosting milk production. That's a trifecta of ROI.
Okay, critical reality check here. Meloxicam is an anti-inflammatory, and its use in this manner is extra label use in the U.S.
Right. We need to emphasize this isn't something a farmer can just decide to implement next Monday.
Absolutely. Mandatory clarification. It requires a valid VCPR, veterinary client-patient relationship, and a prescription. You have to have an established ongoing relationship with your herd vet who knows your farm and prescribes this intervention under the proper legal framework.
Which just underscores that targeted protocols are a team project, not a DIY endeavor. You don't have a VCPR, you can't access this powerful tool.
And this brings us back to the older cows. If the anti-inflammatory works by targeting that intense first-time inflammation, what about the fifth lactation cow? Does she still benefit?
This is why the targeted approach saves money. Older cows, according to tracking by Mike Overton's group, showed no significant economic benefit from the same blanket prepartum anti-inflammatory protocols.
Not at all.
They handle the inflammatory stress differently. So treating every cow, old and young, means you are actively wasting $40 to $60 per treatment on a large segment of your herd that won't see a return.
So we save money by ignoring the cows that don't need it, and we amplify production by focusing on the heifers who need it most. That's the definition of precision. Let's quantify that economic win conservatively.
Even conservative estimates suggest the targeted approach can yield 450 to over 1,500 pounds of extra milk over 150 days of lactation.
Let's just settle on 750 pounds of extra milk. At $20 a hundredweight, that's $150 in recovered revenue, just on the milk side.
Now let's run the net benefit calculation comparing the two worldviews. The traditional or blanket approach costs about $45 to $60 per cow herd-wide. And the NAHMS data confirms that with this approach, disease rates still hover around 27 to 25% in the first 60 days.
Right. Now, the targeted approach flips the cost structure. Your low-risk cows, the healthy, normal BCS older girls, they only cost $15 to $25 in basic support.
Yeah.
But your high-risk cows, the fat heifers, the high SCC cows, they get the full sophisticated treatment, costing maybe $65 to $95 per head, depending on what you do.
But the outcome is the proof. You're talking about disease rates dropping to 18 to 24%.
That's a measurable, bankable 25 to 30% reduction in sickness. You cut your vet bills, you cut your labor costs, and you recover production.
When you net all that out, the reduced treatment costs, the reduced vet fees, the recovered milk, and the reduced fertility hit, you land squarely in that $200 to $500 per cow per lactation net benefit. That is the actual gap we are trying to close.
But, and there's always a but, here's the caution we must always include. CheckGuard's emphasis rings loudest here.
Right.
The benefit only applies if you can execute consistently, and that if is where 80% of U.S. dairies are stumbling.
We have to tackle the elephant in the room, the infrastructure hurdle. If the economics are this clear, a $200 to $500 ROI, why are 80% of U.S. dairies lagging behind? Why aren't they ready to implement this?
I wish the answer was exciting, but it's brutally simple. Cash flow and capital access.
It always comes down to money.
The USDA outlook suggests profitability is shaky for a lot of farms right now. When milk is volatile and feed costs are high, putting $10,000 into a new data system or even $1,000 into new protocols, it feels like an unaffordable luxury.
Even if the long-term ROI is guaranteed.
Even then. Chris Wolf at Cornell articulated this perfectly as the productivity trap. The farms struggling the most, the bottom 40% with the highest cost of production, are precisely the ones that lack the capital to invest in the data systems and labor training that would actually close the gap.
It's a cruel, self-perpetuating cycle. The farms that need the efficiency gains most are the ones that can least afford the upfront investment to get them.
It's so frustrating. Because the investment isn't just in expensive software, it's in discipline and training. But even training costs time, and time is money when you're milking 3 times a day.
That leads us straight into the behavioral side, which often overrides logic. Jennifer Van Oss's work at Wisconsin on the prevention paradox is essential reading here. She points out that preventing ketosis, or a DA, is psychologically unsatisfying.
Say more about that. What do you mean by unsatisfying?
You follow the protocol religiously.
Oh.
You spend the money on the targeted treatment. The cow doesn't crash.
Yeah.
And nothing visible happens. There's no drama. You can't point to the 0 sick cows and declare victory because it just feels like you did your job. The success is quiet, invisible, and easily forgotten.
But when you miss one and she crashes.
That is immediate, visible, and requires a massive, memorable intervention. That's the $1,000 loss that creates a visceral memory.
Exactly. Think back to that anonymized dairyman story we referenced. He implemented the protocols for 6 months and saved 12 cows from crashes, a massive financial win.
But he lost one high-value genomic heifer because she was misclassified and the protocol failed on her.
And what did he remember? He remembered the $3,000 loss on the one he missed, not the quiet cumulative gains on the dozen he saved. The pain is psychologically more potent and memorable than the quiet success of prevention.
So we need management systems that actively celebrate and confirm prevention, even when there's no drama. And that's why integrated data is not negotiable eventually.
Right. Marcia Andres' research shows the immense difference integrated data makes. Farms using herd management software, where BCS scores, milk weights, health events all flow seamlessly into one system, they have significantly higher adoption rates for these precision protocols.
And why is that?
Because the system doesn't rely on human memory or clipboards.
It solves the Jose versus Miguel problem. Let's drill down on this.
The problem is consistency across shifts and across languages. When your best transition cow manager, Jose, is off on Sunday, does the substitute worker, Miguel, know that cow 1847 is on the high-risk protocol and needs that specific feed additive or that anti-inflammatory shot?
Without system integration, without a hard red flag popping up on the screen regardless of who is entering the data, the whole delicate implementation just breaks down instantly. Human error overrides good science.
That's the reality of working with large, diverse teams. The team needs training, but it also needs guardrails.
And that's why the training has to be hands-on too. Gustavo Schumann's finding confirmed that physical, hands-on walkthroughs of the protocol yield significantly better compliance than just handing out a written standard operating procedure.
You can't just memo the team on what a BCS 3.75 looks like. You have to physically show them on the cow, in the pen, on the feed bunk. It's about building muscle memory and shared knowledge.
Okay, let's be the solution for a minute. For the 80% caught in the productivity trap, who can't afford the $10,000 integrated software system right now, how do they bridge this data gap?
We need low-tech solutions that build discipline. You don't need a central database to start. You need a dedicated whiteboard in the dry cow barn.
A whiteboard.
Instead of trying to track 15 metrics, you track just the high-risk group.
So the low-tech bridge could be as simple as the person scoring BCS on dry-off day writes the cow number on the whiteboard, and the feeder knows that every cow on that list gets the high-risk dry cow ration TMR specs.
That's system integration using analog technology.
Exactly. It forces discipline, visibility, and accountability without massive capital expenditure. It addresses the Jose versus Miguel problem by creating a shared, simple, visual cue that everyone can follow.
And if that whiteboard system fails, you know your management needs operational work before you ever spend a dime on software.
That's a great test of readiness. If you can't manage a whiteboard, you can't manage SAP. This is about building the culture of precision first.
Let's look overseas for a second, because Europe gave us a clear roadmap for large-scale systemic change, albeit a forced one.
The EU Regulation 2196, January 2022. That date terrified European dairy farmers. It banned prophylactic antibiotic use, specifically eliminating blanket dry cow therapy across the board. The fear was that mastitis rates were going to skyrocket.
And what we saw after the initial chaos was a massive success story. Countries like the Netherlands, which started with low voluntary adoption, rapidly pivoted to over 80% selective adoption.
And the result?
Dr. Krumker's research confirms that they now see mastitis rates drop below what they had with blanket treatment.
Wait, they were forced to stop using antibiotics protectively, and their mastitis rates improved. That seems counterintuitive.
It speaks volumes about the importance of good management. The forced shift created accountability. It created the necessary infrastructure. Vet schools had to fast-track training on culturing and selective dry cow therapy decision trees.
The co-ops had to step up and provide advisory support to their members.
The entire ecosystem adapted because the government drew a line in the sand, and that systemic support is what's missing for U.S. voluntary adoption, which is currently stuck at about 1 in 4 farms.
So if we don't have that mandatory push here, what does success look like for the U.S. farms that are successfully capturing that $500 gap today? They must have common threads.
They absolutely do. 3 things stand out. Integrated data and discipline, which we've talked about, but it often includes using automated scoring systems like cameras or automated feeders to get rid of that human error in BCS scoring.
Okay, what's second?
Second, they have strong veterinary partnerships. Their vet isn't just someone they call when a cow is sick. The vet is an embedded consultant reviewing protocols monthly, helping design the targeted intervention, and critically, facilitating the extra label uses like meloxicam legally and responsibly through a solid VCPR.
And third?
And third, the implementation discipline. Someone on staff, the herd manager, the owner, the lead milker, owns the protocol review every single month. It's a standing agenda item, not an afterthought.
Beyond those foundational pillars, I love looking at how smart farmers tailor the system. The generic protocol works, but local adaptation is what makes it profitable.
Give us some examples of that regional calibration.
Okay, think about the Southwest in New Mexico and Arizona. Heat stress compounds every metabolic issue. A cow that's borderline ketotic in Wisconsin might be fine, but under 110-degree heat stress in Arizona, she crashes immediately.
So they use it for survival.
Exactly. They can't afford to guess which cows need extra support when their core body temperature is already elevated.
And what about humidity?
Florida dairies near Okeechobee face relentless humidity. They found that subtle BCS shifts happen really rapidly in the summer. So they adapted their protocols to conduct twice-daily scoring on their close-up pens during the worst of the summer heat.
Twice a day.
Twice a day. Because they learned they could catch a cow dropping half a point faster, which signals massive energy mobilization and prevents a crash.
That's a huge operational cost, but I guess it's justified by preventing the $1,000 crash that summer heat makes inevitable.
It is. And my favorite is the common sense adaptation I've seen in the Pacific Northwest.
The mud stress system.
Yes. In parts of the PNW, where mud and moisture stress are constant, a simple rule trumps the data sometimes. Dairies near Yakima Valley are flagging any cow that spent more than 2 weeks in the hospital pen last lactation.
So forget the BCS and SEC for a second.
Right. If she was sick then, her immune system is compromised and she is high risk now. That's farming wisdom integrating perfectly with the precision goal.
Those are powerful examples of why precision needs to be customized. But we have to address the reality check. Targeted management is not a silver bullet. There are critical limitations that can negate all that hard work.
Number one limitation: genetics. Kent Weigel's work in genomics suggests cows bred for high genetic merit health traits, low SCC, good reproductive health, may already be more resilient. They're inherently less likely to crash.
So they show a less dramatic response to targeted intervention.
Exactly. They're already doing part of the job themselves, which means the ROI is lower.
And the facility issue is non-negotiable. Peter Krotzel documented that if you are chronically overcrowded stocking densities at 110 to 120% or higher, the stress from that overcrowding just overwhelms any precision intervention you try.
Oh, absolutely. You can give a cow the best targeted nutrition and the best anti-inflammatory shot. But if she can't physically get to the bunk because of bullying or competition, or if she has to stand in the alleyway all day, the system fails. Overcrowding negates targeted protocol benefits entirely.
It's the hierarchy of needs.
Space, comfort, and fresh feed first. Then precision interventions.
So if the facility isn't right, stop trying to fine-tune the carburetor and fix the cracked engine block first.
Precisely.
So finally, if we want to accelerate adoption across the entire U.S. industry, especially helping that 80% stuck in the productivity trap, what policy or industry changes would actually lower those barriers?
Processor requirements are the quickest lever. If Tillamook or another major processor ties a quality premium directly to documented SEC-based selective dry-off protocols, every producer on that contract adopts it overnight.
That ties quality control directly to management precision.
Right. Cooperative shared infrastructure is also key. The Organic Valley model, where smaller farms can access shared vet support programs and specialized advisory services, that dramatically shrinks the economic barrier.
If your co-op provides the software infrastructure, you don't have to buy it yourself.
Exactly. And finally, federal support. The USDA has funds for precision agriculture. If they made transition management protocols like the cost of targeted vaccines, specialized feed additives, or data consulting services eligible for cost-share programs, that would provide the necessary capital buffer for struggling farms.
It would let them actually implement the program without immediate cash flow panic.
That's the missing link. Capital access for infrastructure improvements that, guarantee a massive ROI down the line.
All right, a farmer just finished milking, the sun is coming up, and they are driving to the feed store right now. The message is clear. The $500 gap is real and the science works, but implementation is the killer. What are the 3 things they need to remember from today? We need immediate, practical advice.
This is about starting simple, visible, and building discipline before you try to climb the data mountain.
Takeaway 1, focus on the one simple flag, BCS greater than or equal to 3.75.
Immediate action. This week, forget the spreadsheets and the expensive software for now. Get a highly visible tool, an orange livestock marker, a specific brightly colored ear tag, and set up one simple rule. Every cow with a BCS of 3.75 or more at dry-off gets that orange stripe on the tailhead. That is your high-risk group.
It has to be simple, cheap, and visible to every single person on the farm.
It has to be.
Medium-term strategy, 3 to 6 months. Run this single, simple protocol religiously. The orange stripe means logistically that cow is on the most controlled energy dry cow ration. Ensure your feeder knows the specific TMR specs for the orange group versus the no-mark group.
This builds the foundational logistics around a visible signal.
Long-term positioning, 1 to 2 years. This process is your implementation audit. If you can't consistently manage the orange stripe protocol for 90 days, you won't successfully manage a complex software platform. Use this period to determine if your team and management system are truly ready for precision.
That's a great point.
Takeaway 2, align the team and budget for the behavioral curve.
Immediate action. This week, schedule a hands-on physical walkthrough of the dry-off process with everyone involved. Feeders, dry-off crew, fresh cow crew. It has to be a physical step-by-step walkthrough focusing on how to identify the orange striped cow and what she gets.
Remember Schoenemann's finding? Hands-on training works better than just a written SOP.
Medium-term strategy, 3 to 6 months. Set realistic expectations for the ROI. Budget for the 5 to 6 months required to see positive trends in the parlor, not 5 weeks. Be mentally prepared for that temporary production dip around month 2 as your systems adjust and you stop overfeeding low-risk cows.
Don't let the prevention paradox convince you to pull the plug too early.
And for long-term positioning, 1 to 2 years. Use this initial discipline period to ensure everyone, Jose and Miguel, understands the high-risk protocol.
Oh.
If the implementation fails, you stop, you retrain, and you fix the operational workflow before you waste capital and technology.
And finally, takeaway 3. Track the 3 key outcomes and ignore the rest.
Immediate action this week. Get your vet and nutritionist involved from day 1 if they aren't already. They need to help you design the specifics of the intervention for your specific orange cows based on your regional challenges. This is a team project. You cannot be an island.
Medium-term strategy, 3 to 6 months. Pick just 3 simple, actionable metrics for monthly review. Focus on fresh disease rate, aim for under 20% by 6 months. 60-day milk average, watch the trend, not the daily spike. And days to first service, target under 70 days. Do not track 20 metrics, focus breed success.
Long-term positioning, 1 to 2 years. If these 3 numbers consistently improve over 9 months, you are actively capturing that $200 to $500 per cow net benefit and pulling ahead of your neighbor. If they aren't improving, the process, not the science, is broken, and you know exactly where to audit your team. This has been another Bovine podcast from the Bovine Podcast. The cows that need targeted help are already in your barn. The crucial question is whether you can build a system of discipline and data to find them before they crash and cost you $1,000. For more straight-talking industry analysis, head to www.thebulvine.com.
Subscribe wherever you get podcasts. We're out with new episodes every day, and upcoming topics will be the debate over heifer raising costs versus outsourcing. Where do you save money and where do you sacrifice genetics? Thanks for diving deep with us.